In this video, I want to just talk to you generally about Microsoft SQL Server. Now, for those of you who've been around a while, you may know part of this, but for many of us, we kind of tend to focus on just one area. And so we miss the big picture. And I want to bring everybody under the same set of understanding here as to exactly what Microsoft SQL Server is, where it's come from, and where it's going. Now, this video is especially helpful for those of you who may be new to the family here. So welcome aboard. Now, Microsoft's SQL Server first appeared way back in the late 1980s, and back then it was a 16-bit relational database system. This was the target of an outcry going on out there in the business world for a database system. Now, this thing targeted IBM's OS/2 platform. In the early days, Microsoft and a company named Sybase were working together to target the OS/2 platform. Now, this was in response to a database explosion that took place using flat file tools like Ashton Tate's DBase family of database products, and there were some others. And then, of course, Microsoft Access came along, and a lot of small and medium-sized businesses really got addicted to databases. And then they started to see the problems with flat file databases and hitting the walls with efficiency and stability. And so everybody started looking for relational database alternatives. And Microsoft jumped into the market along with Sybase, targeting the OS/2 platform. Ever since that day, we got to a point where Microsoft and Sybase parted ways. Each took the source code that had been developed to that point and went their own separate ways. The evolution of SQL Server since that day has been astonishingly steady and impressive. At this time, 98 of the Fortune 100 companies use Microsoft's SQL Server. So I guess in a roundabout way, what I'm telling you is learning this technology is going to be a very wise decision from a career standpoint and from a standpoint of ensuring that you always have a skill set that is in demand. Currently, SQL Server is second place in the database management system DBMS market share. It competes heavily with the likes of Oracle and a few others. Generally, it's been kind of an Oracle SQL Server battle for a few years now. SQL Server is really a lot more than a relational database management system. It is now a complete data management platform. And that's the thing that I really want to stress here. Now, while in this course, we're going to concentrate on the aspects of the SQL Server database engine and administering a SQL Server, you need to understand there's a lot more going on here. And so I want to kind of widen your scope a little bit. Yes, absolutely. You need to find your chops on administering SQL Server. And the more you can understand about the administrative aspects of SQL Server, the more you'll understand why DBAs sometimes seem so inflexible and so just determined to kill every good idea that anybody has. And it is because they're trying to protect the business's number one asset, and that is the data that that business owns. SQL Server is indeed a relational database management system, an RDBMS, you'll hear it called. Now, you need to understand this aspect of it. This really is the foundational aspect of SQL Server. It's a relational database management system that sits out there. We create our databases, we collect data, drop it into those databases, and then those databases become the foundation for everything else we do with our data all over the organization. We also see things that have shown up in the evolution of SQL Server over the years, things like data quality services. Because when we start to create this central repository for data, especially for large companies, one of the things that we start to figure out very quickly is that different departments and different people have different ways of viewing exactly the same data. They may use slightly different acronyms, they may use different terms, they may value that data differently. And with a product like Data Quality Services and its close cousin, Master Data Services, we can ensure that as data goes into our central repository, that it all means the same thing. Think about this. This can be as simple as someone using a 3-letter acronym for something and someone else using a 2-letter acronym or a 4-letter acronym. They're both talking about the same product, the same service. They're just using different acronyms. As you well know, when you query a database, those two different acronyms will come back as two separate products. And so we've got to somehow merge our data, get it all what we call consistent, so that the data in there means the same thing to everyone in different parts of the organization. And especially The way technology continues to shrink our world, keep in mind, a lot of large companies now have global offices. And so not only do we deal with regional differences, but we also start to deal with different perspectives on abbreviations, spellings, and so forth, like between the US and even Canada or England and other countries as well. SQL Server has also grown and blossomed into what we would call a complete data management platform. And this is the part that I want you to just kind of know is out there. And when you get a chance, and stop wasting that time between midnight and 4 every night, go out and do a little reading on the other side of SQL Server, if you will. There's a side of SQL Server that's collectively known as business intelligence. And this involves things like data warehousing. We're going to take the data that we collected in our standard relational database management system, and we're going to build a different physically structured database that serves our analytical queries over past history. And so we can query historical data and look for trends, comparisons, and so forth. And so we need a different database for that, and data warehousing solves that. Then we also have things called multi-dimensional data cubes. Now this has to do with data modeling. We'll take that data in the data warehouse, pull out the data that we need most often for our reports, and we can store it into multi-dimensional data cubes. It's far outside the scope of this course, but it makes that data available very, very quickly and very, very efficiently for all sorts of analytical reporting issues. Tabular data is the new shiny version of data models. It takes multi-dimensional data cubes, makes them much simpler for the average user, and it extends that data out to tools like Excel and some other things that Microsoft's developing that allows power users and analytical people, especially at executive levels, be able to open Excel and just drag and drop items and slice and dice data and make decisions going forward. Then you have things like SQL Server Integration Service. This is an astounding tool that, the bottom line, the first time I ever saw Microsoft demonstrate this, the guy said, this will take data from anywhere and put it anywhere and even massage it along the way and make changes to it. And everybody kind of chuckled. And 45 minutes later at the end of the presentation, he got a standing ovation. It was absolutely phenomenal. SQL Server Integration Service is what we use to perform what's called ETL, extract, transform, and load. Pull data from a source, change it to make it match. There's that data consistency, and then push it into a new database or a new location. SQL Server Reporting Services, SSRS, one of the things that became very apparent early on, okay, we've collected all this data. Now, how do we provide reports to people in a safe, secure, efficient manner? SQL Server Reporting Services does that. As you go through this course and you get your head wrapped around the administrative aspects of relational databases on SQL Server, just know that you're adding a foundation and you're adding even more learning, even more stability to your foundation. It's going to allow you to specialize and do even more valuable functionalities across the next few years with Microsoft SQL Server.